According to reports, the multi-billionaire celebrity Mark Cuban is set to sell a majority stake of the Dallas Mavericks. He also recently announced that season 16 will be his last on Shark Tank. So what's he up to? Well, Sports Illustrated has this headline out today asking if a presidential run is next. Bill Kristol, you might know the name, longtime conservative in politics here in the Beltway, writing today, quote, "A few months ago, Mark Cuban said he wouldn't run for president in 2024 because my family would disown me. Perhaps someone should check in with his family today." Hello to you all. Nice to have you in. Mark Cuban, and there's, some chatter, some speculation. Is this about Mark Cuban or who is being perceived at the top of both tickets?
Well, he's been sniffing around before. I first met Mark Cuban in 2016 when he was flirting very loosely with the idea. He's around. And you'd have to say, if you're thinking about who could No Labels nominate, Mark Cuban makes sense. He's very famous. He can self-fund. And he would have sort of the right approach to go mix things up in the general election. Mark Cuban could make a lot of sense there, but who knows?
I think oftentimes you hear, when looking at this, I think looking at the top of the ticket, these stories are going to come out about people like Mark Cuban because Donald Trump and Joe Biden, who it looks like they are both going to be their party's nominees, are pretty unpopular, and that matchup is certainly unpopular.
So hold that thought for a second. Headline from a few years ago, Mark Cuban, quote, "Biden and Trump aren't best and brightest that this country has to offer." That's what he said. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you'll definitely expect to hear potentially more from him on that. If he goes down this path we think he might be going down. But look, I mean, this is someone who is, like Chris said, he's well known, he's well liked, has very big ties to the business community, obviously, has a lot of money, certainly raised some eyebrows.
I'm tired of people who have no experience running a government.
How'd that work out for you last time?
Didn't work out. Doesn't work out much, right? And also, Colin Cowherd's the guy breaking this news. Didn't he pick the Jets to win the Super Bowl?
He's speculating.
Off this a little bit.
J-E-T-S. You think we're talking about the wrong guy?
I do. I think we should talk about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but here's why. There's a lot of business people who think they make great politicians. Mike Bloomberg, Carly Fiorina, Jamie Dimon. They'd be miserable at it. If he runs, he's not running as a business person, just like Donald Trump wasn't running as a business person. Donald Trump ran as a television star.
Right.
Okay? Mark Cuban is a celebrity. That's a different category. So I do think Stirewalt's right. By the way, it only took me 4 minutes to say that this time.
Okay.
That there's a chance if No Labels looks at this person as opposed to the Mansion, which I think there's no constituency for. It's a different kettle.
NBC News, and there's is reporting that Mark Cuban has said he has no plans to run in 2024.
That means it's Nikki Haley had no plans to run against Donald Trump. I mean, it's just that when a politician tells you I have no plans, it means I might have plans tomorrow.
Mark Cuban has said he really hates Donald Trump, right? So he's not going to run as a third party against Donald Trump and Joe Biden and help Donald Trump win. So where's his lane?
But I disagree with the premise that any third-party candidate hurts Biden more than it does Trump.
Right. I agree.
I think that Mark Cuban, I think Democrats have to accept the reality. There are going to be a lot of other candidates on the ballot this cycle, and the share. So if you get 5% in a typical year of wasted votes, no offense to vote wasters, but people who are voting for a libertarian candidate or a green candidate or writing in somebody, that number is going to be higher than 5% if you have these two extraordinarily unpopular dudes running against each other. So I think Democrats just have to accept that
somebody's
there's going to be
blink,
a lot
right?
of
Don't you
siphonage.
think, Chris? Somebody's going to blink. I just think one of the parties are going to blank at some point, and they're going to jettison
last
one or
word
two of these
To
guys.
your point, though, he can't run as a Republican because it's too late. He can't run as a Democrat because it's too late. Can't get on the ballots in most of the states. So it'd have to be as an independent or a third party like No Labels.
Or if he's serious or interested, 2028 potentially. Who knows?
One cycle at a time.
One cycle.
I can't do two at once.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.